Republicans are gamely trying to show off their own moral credentials because they took Congressman Steve King off his committees after the man literally defended white supremacy. But that was after 20 years of knowing his odious views and supporting him. Trump even campaigned for him in 2014. And it doesn't stop with Steve King. Remember this guy? The indicted Congressman Duncan Hunter, who is alleged, along with his wife, to have stolen hundreds of thousands of campaign dollars, that guy. He ran against a Palestinian Mexican-American with ads like this.
Amar Kapanejar is working to infiltrate Congress. He's used 3 different names to hide his family's ties to terrorism. His grandfather masterminded the Munich Olympic massacre. His father said they deserved to die.
There was essentially no reaction from Republicans. No calls to apologize. It was not a big national scandal. There was no calls to drop out of the race, resign. Basically, everyone was fine with it because generally the Republican Party in the age of Donald Trump as president is fine with all kinds of bigotry. Joining me now, Amar Kapanejar, who was the target of Duncan Hunter's vile ad and who plans to run against the indicted congressman again. Rabbi Jill Jacobs, executive director of TRUA, the Rabbinic Call for Human Rights, who wrote last week in the Washington Post about the false comfort of Trump's condemnation of anti-Semitism. Let me start with you, Amar. I thought of you when I was watching the Ilhan Omar thing play out, when we're sort of talking about what do people have and have not apologize for in terms of bigoted statements or perceived bigoted statements, and I thought, I wonder what Amar Kapanejar thinks about this. Was it a big deal, those ads that he ran against you? Did Republicans call for him to apologize or get out of the race?
There was no apology that was issued towards me from Duncan Hunter. Honestly, I don't want an apology from him. It doesn't mean anything coming from him, to be honest. But here's what I do know, Chris. We're at a moral crossroads as a country and as politicians. We can either explore unity or exploit division, and I think this election in 2020 and beyond is about us paving a path towards a unified, fortified, progressive future for all of us. And there is no room in America for hate speech. This is the only country on earth that was built on the notion that our differences don't outweigh our common humanity. It's the only nation that was built off of welcoming all nations. So there's no room in this country for hate speech on either side, and I don't expect anything really becoming of Hunter, to be honest, or his party, for that matter.
Do you feel like there's, Rabbi Jacobs, any sort of clear standard that's been articulated about bigotry, its place, what is worth apologizing for or resigning over?
Well, it's very clear that bigotry is not okay in our public discourse. All of us...
You mean that as a normative statement? Like it shouldn't be, right?
It shouldn't be.
Because it's not that clear that it's not okay in our public discourse.
And it's also clear that there's racism, there's sexism, there's anti-Semitism, homophobia, xenophobia, et cetera, in America, because it's deeply rooted in our society, and we have a responsibility to call it out whenever we see it. And so it's important to call it out. I don't think that there's one standard that says once somebody crosses this line, then they have to resign. But what I do think is important is that we're not weaponizing anti-Semitism, racism, sexism, that we're not only using it for our own political means, that we're calling it out whether it's on the left or the right, but weaponizing anti-Semitism, for example, doesn't make Jews any safer. It doesn't protect Jews from violence against us in our synagogues, in our community centers. We for sure have to call out anti-Semitism, but it shouldn't be a cynical political move.
Okay, so what does weaponizing mean?
Well, for example, when we saw President Trump turn around and say that Representative Omar should resign because of her tweet. Now, people on both the left and the right called her out for stepping into an anti-Semitic stereotype. But Trump is somebody who watched neo-Nazis march through Charlottesville shouting, "Jews will not replace us," and said there were very fine people on both sides. And he's somebody who has made common cause with white nationalists and spurred the kind of hatred that ultimately led a terrorist to walk into a synagogue in Pittsburgh and murder 11 Jews while they were praying. And so somebody like that, who can't look at his own anti-Semitism, should certainly not be calling out somebody else.
Well, I thought about Kevin McCarthy, too, Amar, because Kevin McCarthy intimately involved in your race because he was intimately involved with California, that California delegation, which, by the way, he managed to, basically get rid of the 8 of them for his efforts. But your indicted opponent, he kept. I mean, did Kevin McCarthy say anything about the kind of race that Duncan Hunter ran against you that was so obviously rooted in your ethnicity?
He didn't at all. But here's the silver lining. There were 17 rabbis, Chris, who stood up shoulder to shoulder with me and condemned Hunter's attacks. In the wake of Pittsburgh, it was the most heartening thing to see for me as a Palestinian American, to see my brothers, my Jewish brothers and sisters standing up shoulder to shoulder and showing the moral authority that Kevin McCarthy and Donald Trump did not have. So it was heartening to me, and that's why I decided to run again, in fact. We got really close, and I think Hunter, in my case, he was using this as a weapon of mass distraction. We talked about this last time, to pivot away from his issues and the struggles that the people in our district are facing. And that's why this go around, I'm not going to get distracted with his crap. I'm going to focus on the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, getting big money out of politics, and really paving a path towards a unified, fortified, progressive future where me and Rabbi Jacobs could never have to deal with this stuff again.
One thing that is clear to me is that Republicans sense division on the issue, particularly of Israel, in the Democratic Party coalition, and that's two partisan, in the broad sort of center-left progressive universe, and they view an opportunity to drive a wedge into that.
Republicans are absolutely looking for an opportunity to use Israel as a wedge issue. And that is not helping Israel. That is not being pro-Israel at all. The only thing that is being pro-Israel is to actually work for a long-term solution that will guarantee the human rights and security of both Israelis and Palestinians, which is a two-state solution with Israel side by side with a Palestinian state. And Republicans' rhetoric, some of the bills that they're trying to drive that would, for example, try to ban boycotting Israel, which I don't agree with. I don't boycott Israel, and yet it doesn't, these kinds of bills do nothing to actually protect Israel or to move forward a peace agreement.
So you view it as cynical, fundamentally?
I absolutely view it as cynical.
All right. Amar Kampa-Najjar, who will be, as he just announced, running for that seat against Duncan Hunter, who I think is going to go to trial at some point. He'll have to deal with the charges against him.
In September, yeah.
Yeah, innocent until proven guilty in our system.
That's why he won.
Yeah, he'll get to make his case. And Rabbi Jill Jacobs, thank you.